another episode of Her Story Untold Studios. I am your host, Tanir. But before we get into this beautiful introduction from my guest today, I would like you to stop what you're doing. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe so we can drop more videos like this. You guys seem to be liking these videos a lot. And we're also on the goal to getting to 400 subbies. We're so close. So we need your help. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Okay, now that we got that out the way, I would like my guest to introduce herself.
Hello, my name is Starr Branch. I'm a lifestyle content creator. I share bits and pieces of my life to encourage everyone to have healing, hope, and freedom. That's the blanket. I am a single mom of two. I'm from Virginia Beach or Chesapeake, Virginia area. I now live in Fayetteville, North Carolina.
Okay.
I am a military veteran
Oh,
and I
nice.
now work in payroll by way of HR. So I have a lot of different backgrounds, but most importantly, I enjoy writing and running and reading.
Awesome. I'm going to talk to you after about the location part. We're going to get
Yes.
into. Okay. So let's get into it. What initially drew you to writing poetry?
Well, I wrote as a child. So I have a lot of like books that we created in school, but I've always
Mhm.
enjoyed writing. I always got journals as a kid. But
Mhm.
life happens and I became busy. I went in the military, I got married, I had kids. So writing took a back seat. Well, 3 years ago, I started my therapy journey. And all therapy does is it opens up your emotions, it opens up your creativity, and it starts to make you express yourself in new ways. So
Right.
I began writing poems to help me put my emotions in words. So it may be something emotionally I don't know how to say, but then I put it in a poem and it makes sense.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm blessed to have a really good community of friends. And I would call and be like, can I read this to you? Or can I read this to you? And they're like, girl, this is good. Like, I can relate to this or I understand what you're saying. And so I ended up sending my therapist one of my poems. And she was like, Star, this is relatable. You need to keep writing. So I kept writing. And luckily, here in Fayetteville, North Carolina, it is very supportive of the arts. And so they have a lot of poetry events here. So I
Mhm.
started going to open mic and really getting comfortable. And so
Right.
from there, I started compiling my work. And my dad was like, "You probably have enough for a book." And I was like, "Oh, you're right, I do." And so that's how the journey to producing the book came along.
Awesome. How would you say your poetry writing has evolved over the years?
I would say, as I have grown to love and appreciate myself, who I
Mhm.
am, my writing has become more vulnerable. So I
Okay.
don't mind writing about how difficult grief is. I don't mind writing how difficult it is being single. I don't mind writing how hard it is to seek God when I'm struggling. I'm okay writing that stuff because now I'm sure about who I am. I'm confident in who I am. So it
Right.
gives me that freedom to write in a more vulnerable sense, which I
Mhm.
think people need that if they're going to connect to the writing.
Okay. Can you describe the moment or event that made you decide to put your poetry into a book?
Yes. I went to an open mic here in Fayetteville and I read one of my poems that's actually in the book. And
Okay.
it is titled Head in the Sand. So my therapist told me that I operate with my head in the sand. Like when I'm getting overwhelmed or emotional, even like
Mhm.
trauma, I put my head in the sand and act like nothing's happening. So I wrote a poem about, yeah, I put my head in the sand because this is too much. It's too much to think about the generational trauma. It's too much to think about forgiving people who hurt me. It's too much to think about. And so I went to an open mic and I recited that poem and it was received very well. And I
Mhm.
was like, Okay, girl, you might have something here. So that was probably a significant shift in my I realized, oh, my writing is not just for me, it's for other people too.
Okay, I like that. I like that. I
Thank
love
you.
poetry.
Oh,
I used
cool.
I used to write poetry a lot when I was a teenager. And, a lot of us, when we first start with writing out poetry, we think that it has to rhyme, We're not thinking
Right.
about like just the feeling of somebody understanding what it is that you may be going through, depending on what type of poetry you're writing. So I was like, if it don't rhyme with roses is red, violets are blue, um,
Yes.
I don't think I'm good at writing poetry, but I love writing too. We have some similar interests. I love
Yes,
writing.
that's one thing that I've seen a lot on threads or Facebook groups is people, poets, really affirming for others. Your poetry does not have to rhyme. Your
Right.
poetry can be a story. Your poetry can be a theme. I have a poem and it's called And Sometimes, because sometimes you don't feel like it. Sometimes you don't want to. Sometimes you're mad. Sometimes you're
Hmm.
happy, and sometimes that's all the poem is. It's just a list of things, but
Right.
it means a lot. Mm-hmm.
So, how did
Yeah.
you struggled a little bit with grief when it came to losing your father and your grandmother, I believe? So,
Yeah.
how did your experience with grief influence the themes and emotion poetry?
Yeah, that's so good. I lost my dad the month before I turned 16. So when I said
Mhm.
dad earlier in the video, it's my stepdad. But when I lost my father, I was 15. I lost my grandmother at 21. Last year, I lost my godmother, and I also lost a good friend. So I've dealt
Wow.
very heavily, yes, very heavily with losing people. And I
Hmm.
struggle with what's called compound grief. That since I
Hmm.
lost my dad at such a young age, whenever I lose someone else, it feels the same as losing my father. My body, my mind, it doesn't know the difference between losing my father and losing my godmother. It just knows I've lost something.
Right.
And so I've been able to use that emptiness, that void, and allowing my poetry to speak to it, to
Hmm.
like I said earlier, it gives it a voice.
Right.
It's, and then I have a poem called Dear Depression and a poem called Dear Grief, because I needed to speak right to it. I needed to speak to the grief and tell it, hey, I can let you come and hang out for a little bit, but you can't stay here.
Right.
um like in the movie Inside Out, we learned sadness, you can have sadness for a little bit. It's the
Right.
same with grief. I can have that feeling, and then I write this poem where I say, okay, you'll stay here a couple days. I'll feel you. Today is Father's Day. I'll feel you today on my birthday, but I'm not gonna sit in this. I'm not gonna let this become my identity. And so I think writing the poems helped me like release that. And then my really good friend I lost last year, I wrote the poem for her funeral and I was able to recite it at her funeral. And it's a
Hmm.
poem that I wrote to her. But anyone who has lost someone, the poem is written, obviously her name is in it, but it's written in a way that you can relate to. And that's really important for me, is that when someone reads my poetry, that they see themselves, they feel themselves in it. So that's how
Wow.
I've been able to use the emotion of grief in the poetry.
Wow, that's amazing. That's
Thanks. Thank
amazing.
you.
Can you share a specific poem from your book that
Yes,
directly reflects your journey through grief?
I would love to.
Yes.
Um, okay, we'll do Dear Depression.
Okay.
Okay. So it says, Dear Depression, you can have me today. Occasionally, you stop by and say, hey, you bring me down, you make me frown, you try to take my crown. So I let you hang around for a day or two. I'm used to you now. I know just what to do. I used to try and fight and ignore the pain to my core. Like an apple, I've eaten the outside as if what was inside wasn't intertwined. But I'm wiser now, and I figured out the flow. I let you come, stay a while, and then you'll go. You come to remind me there is something missing, like a snake. I can't see you, but I hear you hissing. Today, you control my ability to smile. This morning, you made it impossible to run my daily mile. For me, it's the memory of my father. For you, it could be the thoughts of your mother. When we begin to reminisce, we think of all the years that we've missed. We acknowledge the cheeks that will never be kissed. The memories of them feel like bliss. This is why the depression comes. To be sure, to thoughts of you, I will never be numb. It reminds us that there's a void there. When someone dies, in that place and your life is bare. So for a few times each year, I'll let depression have its way. Grief is just a price that I pay. I'll grieve my father for the rest of my life. In this one, and in the next life twice. With memories of my father that's gone. I love you, Daddy, to infinity and beyond. That's Dear Depression.
Yes.
Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Infinity.
Yeah, question. Because it's like I said, depression, you can come, stay a while, but you gotta go. Like you can't stay here.
Right. Temporary.
Yes.
I love
So
that. Yep.
there are three poems in the book that are
Mhm.
listed in the topic of grief.
Okay. Okay. We're gonna have you read some more poetry tonight, okay?
I
Yeah.
love it. Thank
Hey,
you.
you're welcome. What has been the most therapeutic aspect of writing poetry for you?
Hmm. I think the most therapeutic aspect is realizing like I'm that girl.
Period.
Yeah, when you start to utilize whatever creative like art or expression and you start to believe in yourself and then
Right.
it's like you see yourself again. You're like,
Right.
girl, you really have words, or girl, you can really draw, or like you're like interviewing people. That's an art. You create this
Right.
platform like you that girl.
I like
So
that.
yeah, I think that's been very helpful.
Okay.
Because you have to believe in yourself to create and to produce and to share
Right.
it. So I think it gave me a lot of confidence in myself.
Yeah, and it shines. It shines through you.
Thanks. Thanks.
That's one of the things I've seen when I went to your Instagram. Your spirit automatically like shines, and I gravitated towards you. I tell you
Yes.
off camera and on camera, I gravitated towards you, and then I seen your post about you talking about my book. I got my book. And I was like, oh, she's an author. Yeah, I need her on the stage. I need her.
Yes. And I appreciate it so much.
Yes,
Um,
absolutely. So, how has therapy complemented your writing process and your healing journey?
um, Therapy allowed me the tools I needed to say what was already inside of me. Therapy does not give you any conclusion about yourself that you don't already know. But what
Right,
it does is it gives you the foundation, the tools, the ideals to come to a conclusion about those things.
right,
So, yeah, so therapy helped me put words to my depression, put words to my internal conflict, put words to it because I've been in therapy every week for 3 years. It's very extensive, the type of therapy that I've been in. And
okay,
that's why, like you said, I can see your spirit, I can see your confidence. That is therapy all day. Who I am today versus who I was 3 years ago, she's a
mm-hmm.
totally different person. And so
Mm,
I definitely believe that therapy has helped me identify myself, identify my feelings, identify how everything in my life connects.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
What were some of the most challenging emotions you would say to write about, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Probably love. Love is probably the most difficult thing for me to write about. Because I have a very difficult experience with love.
Mm-hmm.
Love has equaled loss for me. So
Right.
I think that that is probably difficult for me to write about.
Okay.
Um, Also freedom. So chapter 3 or section 3 of the poetry book is called Freedom. And it's about after you've gone through healing and you feel like you are moving forward, you're progressing with life, it's still hard. You
Right.
never get to a place where life is smooth sailing. You never really get to a place that you feel sure of yourself. There's always going to be this internal war. And so
Right.
I think freedom, I want everyone to experience freedom, but when I talk about freedom or teach freedom or write about freedom, it's hard because it's not an easy position to sit in life.
Right.
So yeah,
Okay.
probably love and freedom are hard to write about.
Okay. It's interesting. How did the loss of your grandmother and your father shape your perspective on life and creativity?
Mm, that's good because when I started writing my poetry, I began to realize the generational connection. So I have, and I write it in the beginning of the book. I have an uncle who's a poet. My god
Mm-hmm.
sister's a poet. My maternal great grandmother was a poet. And once
Okay.
I finished my poetry book, my mother found a poem in some book, and it's right here. I don't know if y'all can see it. It's
Okay.
a poem that my father wrote his mother when he was a kid.
Wow.
Yes, but I didn't learn these things until after I began expressing.
Mm.
I knew my god sister, she's like the family poet, and my uncle, but excuse me, as far as knowing my dad wrote poetry and knowing that my maternal grandmother wrote poetry, it felt like the ancestors were guiding me.
Your
It felt
purpose.
like girl, no, this is a generational thing. This is
Right.
actually your bloodline. This is your heritage to express yourself with your words. My grandmother was an avid reader. She would read like 3 books at one time. She was
Cool.
very she was very big on communicating effectively and speaking um and public speaking. So I did poetry with my mother at church as a kid. Um, Langston Hughes has a poem called The Creation, and we did the MLK I Have a Dream speech. And my grandmother was very big on public speaking and how you present yourself. And so
Right.
I could see all of those things that were foundational for me in my upbringing were making it possible for me to feel comfortable standing in front of someone or being on a podcast
Right.
because of what my grandmother and my father spoke into me.
Wow. It passed
Mhm.
down to you, Star.
For sure, for
Mhm.
sure,
Wow. What
for
role
sure.
did your family play in your decision to publish your poetry?
Like I said, my stepdad saying, "You probably already have enough poems." And it made me sit and count how many poems I had wrote and start to compile them
Mhm.
in categories. And that's when I realized, like, oh, we do have enough for a book. And then now that I've published it, my family has been my biggest supporter. I got a
Mhm.
message today from 2 of my cousins, my aunt. They sent me pictures of them with my book.
Mhm.
Um, and then the most emotional moment, I went to my stepbrother's house last week, and he's like, "Oh, so how you been? What have you been doing?" And I'm just running my mouth like, "Oh yeah, I published my book. I don't know if you saw it." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I've been reading about a poet." So he tells his girlfriend, "Go get the book off my nightstand." And she comes back and it's my book. And I just
What?
immediately, yeah, I immediately start crying because it's such a surreal moment to see that
Right.
your words have reached your family's house. And they actually support it and are reading it and are enjoying it. So my family has as a whole played a big part, not to mention my cousins who have listened to me call them over and over and over again, reading poems to them. So they definitely already knew it was coming.
Shout out to them. Big support
Hmm.
systems is
Yes,
definitely needed.
It is. And I don't take it for granted. I
Hmm.
realize that some people create and never have anyone's support. So me having their support, them sharing it, them purchasing it, it means a lot to me.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm inspired.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you talk about a specific moment in therapy that led you to a breakthrough in your writing?
Probably the head in the sand.
Okay.
Um, yeah, when my therapist said you operate with your head in the sand, I was like, what do you mean? And so in the book, the poem is written two times.
Hmm.
It's written once for Black women and then once for anyone else.
Okay.
Because when I originally wrote it, I write about I'll just read. Can I read some of it to explain it? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So it's called Head in the Sand. And I'm going to read the version that's predominantly for Black women. So it says,
Okay.
My therapist said I operate with my head in the sand, which is true. Who would want to remember all the things I've been through? I'm gonna skip through and through because it's kind of long. Who wants to recognize that the reason society looks at me in demise is the skin that I grew up in? That even if I straighten my hair and professionalize my voice, there is still a Black woman that they fear speaking to them from within. And so, like, that line itself means so much because,
Right.
yeah, I operate with my head in the sand because even the society that I'm living in doesn't accept me.
Absolutely.
Um, this is another really important part. Who wants to visualize the abuse that's been generationally tailored to the woman in my family? So much so that my man in this millennium resembles the man my grandmother chose in her year that beat her down and broke her spine until all she was the fragment in his mind. Who wants to remember that? So it's like I started to slow down and process. Yeah, I operate with my hand in the sand. Like this is generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I'm choosing men today that resemble men that my grandmother and my great grandmother chose.
Right.
My therapist has this saying. She says, when you are the person in your bloodline who decides to make a change, you have to recognize you're the first. So to begin to think, I'm the first one in my bloodline who is calling this thing out. It's really heavy. Um, so I said this next part. Only when I tell my story will anyone hear of the issues of being a Black woman misused. As if the things I've been through are supposed to fuel me to tell you, for you to have hope that you can get through too. I didn't sign up for that. I didn't sign up to carry you on my back. I didn't sign up for the vulnerability that comes when I must share with you to me what's been done. But what if? What if by sharing with you the pain and drama that I've been through, it would encourage you to stand up to the devils that sent to tie you down, break your back, steal your crown, generationally, just like your grandma. So it's that concept of it's hard. It's
Right.
hard. It's hard to heal, and then it's harder to then tell your story.
Right. Right.
But then you start thinking, oh, there are other women who are plagued with the same addiction or the same lack of self-love or lack of self-worth or
Mm-hmm.
generational trauma and numbing mechanisms. I mean, so much that
Mm-hmm.
we all do because we think we're alone first and we
Right.
haven't had a space to really connect. So that's probably when she said you operate with your head in the sand, it made a light bulb go off. Like, you're right. Why?
Mhm.
So that's the first poem, like I said earlier. That's the poem that I recited, and that's the poem that was the shift in how I understood my poetry.
Okay. Well, first and foremost, when you said the break your spine, how
Mhm.
deep that was, I
Yes.
definitely felt that.
Yes.
So,
Good. I'm
yes.
so happy that you
I,
said that.
I can't wait to receive my copy because,
Yes,
whew,
it is coming.
yeah. So, how do you navigate the balance between writing for personal healing and writing to inspire and motivate others?
I don't think there is a difference.
Okay.
I am in the middle of trying to understand that
Mm-hmm.
because as God continues to download wisdom in me, I have a hard time deciding what I'm supposed to share and what I'm supposed to keep. Because
Mm-hmm.
everything he tells me, I just want to tell y'all, like, girl, and this. So a
Right.
lot of times when I write my poetry, it is for me, but I recognize it's for everyone else too. Um, so I don't, for me, there hasn't been a difference.
Okay. So, what feedback have you received from your readers who have may have experienced similar losses, and how has that impacted you?
The most impactful response that I got so far was my first roommate in the army.
Mm-hmm.
She shared that she enjoyed it and she felt that it would help others find clarity. And she herself posted it on her Facebook page and told her friends and family that they should buy it. And that felt so surreal for me
Mm-hmm.
because someone sharing my post is greatly appreciated. But
Right.
someone taking the time to take a picture of my book with her dog in the background and actually post it means that it must have meant something to her. It means that she actually must have enjoyed it.
Right.
And I have another a woman I went to church with that probably 8 years ago. She purchased it and she read it, and she said that she's a grief counselor, which I did not know. And she said, I think this would really help some of my clients. And so I told her I wanted to meet with her to discuss grief counseling and grief, coaching a little bit more because it's such a detrimental factor in our lives.
Right.
So it felt really good for people to connect with the book. Like I said, my family's so supportive, but it feels good for my extended friend groups to also read it and enjoy it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
how did you find the courage to share your personal and emotional content with the world, such as like posting on Instagram?
Yeah. In the word it says, let your light so shine before men so they could see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard so much that Christians shouldn't be influencers, that
Okay.
we shouldn't be pushing this understanding, but it literally says to let my light shine. So why would I put my light under a lampshade? Why would I
Yeah.
dim it? And so that gave me the freedom to say, hey, no, I'm going to share this. And whoever receives it is going to benefit from it. It could be for one person. God is so intentional. It could be
Mm-hmm.
for one person and it would mean everything to him.
Right.
And just today, I was thanking God for allowing me to be a voice for him, that he would choose to let me do that. So it's more of I feel like I've been given a type of responsibility almost.
Okay.
If I came into the dark and I let you out of jail, you would want to tell everyone, Star came and saved me and let me out of here. And that's
Right.
how I feel. That's how I feel. God came into a very dark time in my life and he pulled me out of the muck and the miry dirt. And I'm like, oh, I gotta tell y'all, because you need to know, like,
Right.
he is a simple, loving, kind God. And so I think that's what encourages me or
Yeah.
motivates me to share those things.
That is amazing, Star. Super,
Thank you.
super proud of you, though.
Thank
You're
you.
turning your grief. Grief. I spoke about this earlier, but grief is not something that you can just close the door on, right? You have to
Mhm.
face it. You have to go through the motions. Uh,
Yes.
you turned grief into therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and you put it in a book to inspire and shift and help other people. Okay?
Yeah.
So, not only from this whole interview, what I'm getting, this was passed down to you through generations, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, your father and your grandmother would be super proud of you.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, you put your poetry in a book so others who may have similar experiences to what caused your grief, and now you're putting them in a position to follow and do what's in their purpose. Do you understand how this is going? I don't think you looked at it this way. But
Yeah.
just hearing you speak is so like, it's refreshing. It's like, oh, I knew you for a long time already, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just amazing. I'm super proud of you. This is a big deal.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
appreciate those words.
So what strategies do you use to stay motivated when it comes to writing?
Oh, looking forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized that once I published the poetry book, it was almost like I was at a peak
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't necessarily thinking about what was next. But
Okay.
just today, I was like, okay, that's done. And God was like, yeah, get back to the next thing. So it's like as a writer, recognizing there is always something to write. There's no cap.
Right.
Every time I produce something, I'll have a new idea to produce. So
Okay.
I'm excited. My next, because I'm gonna share it with you. Um, the next thing I'm writing is a singles journal.
Okay.
And so I'm super excited about finding ways to encourage single women.
Oh,
Yes. Yeah, right.
I need
So
that.
me too. Me too. So I was sitting here today actually like, okay. And God was like, did you forget that I told you that? I was like, oh yeah. So now I'm working on my next project.
That's
But that's
awesome.
but that's special information just for your podcast because I'm not posting it on my social media until I'm ready to publish it. So they
What?
only gonna know if they
We
watch your
got the
podcast.
sneak peek, guys.
Yes.
So, how do you ensure that your poetry remains authentic and true?
Hmm. I think it goes back to what we said earlier, um, that I remain vulnerable in it.
Right.
Um, and that I continue to do it for the one.
Right.
Um, I don't write poetry for the masses. I write the poetry for who the poetry is for. If it ends up being for the masses, great. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't adjust my poetry for the need of anyone else or the need of culture.
Okay.
A lot of times when we hear poets or we see poetry, it's it can be for the intent of pulling something from someone, and that's not what my poetry is intended for. My
Okay.
poetry is just to pour out. So I think remaining vulnerable in that space of creating a platform again or a foundation for someone to begin to deal with their own emotions.
Okay. I like that. What advice would you give to others who are using creative outlets to process their grief?
I would tell them to be patient with yourself. I think it's a journey of knowing, a journey of healing, and I think it really takes time. So I would say first thing I would say is be patient. The second thing I would say is find your community. So allowing myself to read my poems to my cousins or my close friends and even my therapist, it helps encourage me and affirm for me that what I was doing was needed, but I couldn't do that with everybody. So I would definitely say find your community of people who support you and care and see what you're trying to do and
Okay.
utilize that community when you're feeling down or you're feeling unsure about yourself.
Nice. Can you share a story with us who, of a reader who was like deeply impacted by your poetry?
Um let's say, well, I not a reader, but I will say my friend who came with me.
Okay.
So back to the same event when I read about the head in the sand.
Mm-hmm.
I had a really good friend who came with me that time, and when I was done, she was crying.
Wow.
And so seeing her emotionally relate to it with me um affirmed that other people needed it. It was no longer something just for me. It was like, oh,
Right.
she felt those words. She understood where I was coming from. And so probably that was a prominent moment of someone who really received my poetry well, who was close to me.
Wow, that's touching. Wow. What are some of the lessons about grief and healing that you hope readers will take away from your book?
That you can live alongside of grief and healing.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not separate from you. It is a part of you, but it doesn't have to consume you.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't have to fear it, you don't have to run from it, that you can process it. You have the mental ability, you have the emotional intelligence to process those emotions, to process those feelings in a way that actually fuels you to continue on, not necessarily to sit in it.
Okay.
Um, Also to be encouraged. So many times we feel that we're alone in our grief or alone in our pain
Mm-hmm.
because on social media, everybody looks like their life is perfect.
Right.
Everybody looks like they got it together.
Right.
Baby, no. All of us at home at night crying in the bed, okay? And
Yes.
so that's probably one of the really important factors for me was to let other people know, hey, there are others just like you and me who are
Mhm.
processing trauma, processing
Right.
depression, processing grief, and we're getting through it.
Yes. Yes, Star. I'm proud of you. That yes.
Thank you
I
so
I
much.
agree. I totally agree. Internet is definitely smoke and mirrors. There's not a lot of people who want to be organic. It's kind of like the follow train of what everybody's doing, and you got to stand
Yes.
out because if everybody's doing the same thing, how are we gonna know you're really good at poetry or you could sing or
Yeah.
you have
Yeah.
any other talent because you want to do what they're doing?
Yes.
So I definitely agree
Yes.
on that.
And I want to speak to another point because you said stand out.
Mm-hmm.
And in Romans 12:2, which is like one of my life, that's like actually my therapy scripture. That's my therapist started saying that in my first session. It
Mm-hmm.
says not to be conformed by the ways of the world.
Right.
So it's like when we stand out and stand firm in who you are, we don't have to look like everybody else, like for example, I don't have a quote unquote niche for my content creation. I don't
Okay.
have I'm a poet, I'm a writer, I'm a runner, I'm a believer, I'm a mom, and I share all of that
Right.
because people need to see all of it. And that works for me. And so I think it's important for us to stay true to who we are. So I'm happy that you said that.
Yes.
Because it makes a difference.
Authenticity. Being
Mhm.
your authentic self. Okay.
Mhm.
So, how
Yes.
can others support someone who is both grieving and pursuing creative expression?
Okay, so we'll start with grieving first.
Okay.
I have this funny story of my best friend. We've been friends for 21 years, and I can't wait for her to listen to this. We were at my father's funeral. Mind you, I was 15. It's the month before I turned 16.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at the burial site. And she walks over to me and she basically is like, stop crying. And my mom looks over. My mom is ready to, like, don't tell her, don't cry. But I bust out laughing. And so in that moment, that was what I needed. I
Okay.
needed that moment of release or relief.
Right.
But years later, if I want to just boohoo and cry, she would support me there. So I think when we're supporting our family and friends in grief, we have to pause to see what they need.
Right.
Sometimes they need you to just come and sit. Sometimes they need you to take them on a ride.
Right.
Sometimes I have a friend who recently um, was saying, how do I show up for someone? And sometimes the showing up is just sending a text message and then following up. Hey, girl, I'm here if you need me. And then maybe 2 days later, hey, have you thought of any way I can help you out?
Right.
Because when we say, hey, girl, I'm here if you need me, that's very passive. But
Right.
then when I follow up and I say, hey, have you thought of anything I can do to help you? That's affirming, hey, no, I actually want to show up for you. So I think, yeah, I think when it comes to grief, recognizing the different layers of that process.
That is so true. You said a whole mouthful. Having
Yeah.
good, genuine friends around you, whether it's
Yes.
to sit with you and let you cry or vent or whatever it is that you have to do, and
Yes.
as you would say, to release or just
Yes.
feel like, this is off of my shoulders. That's so
Yes.
important, and it's vital. I
Yes.
feel like as you get older, it's not like when you're little and you just go talk to people and you just be friends with the kids. As you get older, friendships are hard. It's hard to make
Very
friends.
true. Very true.
So I love that. You got good people
Yes.
around you, a good support system.
Hmm.
You're on track. You're a mother to, and that was in the military, and you're out here doing your thing and inspiring others. I said it a few times during this interview, and I'll say it again. Super, super proud of you. Shout out to your friend for being that crutch at that
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
and shout out to your family because everything you guys move as a unit. So
Hmm.
that's awesome.
There's one other thing I could share about grief.
Mhm.
I want to encourage people not to tell someone that it gets better. We have a tendency to say, "Oh, it'll get better. It'll get,"
Mhm.
and I do not agree with that statement.
Okay.
Every time that I grieve my father, it feels just as heavy as it felt when I was 15. Now, it is less frequent, so it happens less often, but it
Mhm.
doesn't hurt any less. So I think
Okay.
we should be careful because we're saying it with good intention,
Right.
but we have to be careful how we say things to people when they're grieving.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And another thing to add to that is we were talking about friendships and how important it is to have friendships. You got to be super sensitive when it comes to trauma dumping. You got to make sure when you talk
Yes.
to someone, for me as a friend, what I had to learn is that instead of just calling you and saying, girl, I feel da da da, and I'm telling you everything,
Mm-hmm.
to ask, are
Mm-hmm.
you in a position or a space for me to tell you what I'm about to tell you?
So good.
Okay? Because trauma
So good.
dumping can be a lot. And
Yes.
people don't even realize it. I can already be going through
Yes.
something and you call me and you're telling me you go, now it's like that is on my shoulders too.
Yes.
So,
Especially for creatives because we feel so very heavily, and I don't want to inconvenience you or hurt your feelings. So I could be in the middle of a cry session and I answer the phone, and now, like you said, you're rambling. But I love that you said that, and that goes back to that authenticity and that intentionality for us in friendships as adults.
right,
So yeah, that's so good.
right. Be very selective who you have around you. Share things when you got confirmation. Don't
Mm-hmm.
prematurely share things. Share things that you're
Mm-hmm.
okay with sharing, and just
Yep.
your good friends and everything. By who you select. It will definitely tell you who your character are. Who your
That's the
character.
truth.
So
That's the truth.
I'm very selective who's around me. Energy, mood.
Hmm.
It's just a whole lot of things. Spirits, and
Yes.
so you gotta be very, very careful. I had to learn a lot of lessons for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I recently started learning some lessons.
Hmm.
And I'm
Yes.
trying to be more patient and slow down and be discreet because I grew up I grew up with close knit friends, so as an adult, I just think everybody my friend.
Right.
Like, girl, like we best friends. Hey, girl, hey, best friend. And it's no, baby girl,
Mm.
no. And what's funny is my mom used to say all the time, everybody ain't your friend. Everybody is not your friend. And I used to be like,
Yes.
Mom, please. But now that I'm older, I get it. I get it.
I get it, Mom. Okay. And
Mhm.
that's so crazy because you spoke on it before I can say it. So we definitely was the same. Thinking, my mom used to say, and I quote, "You are wearing rose-colored shades." Okay,
Oh,
how you view the world is not what the world is, and you're gonna find out. Because I thought everything was just so nice. Everybody's so nice. They're my friends until I bring you to meet my mama. You know, my mama was a good.
exactly.
She's a good spirit reader. Okay, as soon as you
Yes.
leave, she's telling me the whole rundown, and
I'm telling
she
you.
has never steered me wrong to this day. Never.
So good.
Yeah.
You are wearing rose colored shades.
Shades. Take them shades off, girl. So you can see
Oh,
that
that
the
is so
world is
good.
really is, you know? And as I got
Yes.
older, I was like, Mom, you were absolutely right. Because I was thinking, like, why
Mhm.
you got beef with all my friends? You know, they
Right.
my friends. You're like, don't bring
Right.
them girls to my house. They don't mean you no good, you know?
No, so true.
Yep.
And it's not personal.
Right.
They have their own trauma, their own grief, their own experiences that are now affecting how they can be a friend to you or
Right.
what they expect for you or from you or what they're draining from you and you don't even realize it because sometimes our gifting, God has given us a gifting of connectivity or cheering people on because I'm an exhorter. So I'm going to cheer you on all day long. Or
Right.
some people, like my cousin, has the gift of mercy. And so people attach to you and you think that relationship is reciprocal, but really they're just attaching to leech. They're attaching to pull
Right.
from you and you'll never be refueled there.
Right. And we have a lot of things in common, Star, because I lost my grandmother. I lost my grandmother to pancreatic cancer. And
Oh, wow.
it dealing with grief, as I talked about grief today, I interviewed somebody before you who's a grief advocate, and she said a lot of the same things you said. But you'll see
Good.
that video later when I post. But not to get
Yes.
sidetracked, when I lost my grandmother, I remember when my grandmother was here. She the kindest person. She'll give you the clothes off her back. She'll, no matter what, if you was an ugly person, if you were mean, and she was in a nursing home. So a lot of the elderly people
Mhm.
didn't like that she had family coming to see her. They did not like
Yep.
it because their
Yep.
family wasn't coming, you know?
Wasn't
So
coming.
they would call and say, oh, she got all these people at her house and stuff like that. And my grandmother was the first one to introduce me to God. She was the first person to tell
Oh,
me about, although she was a Jehovah Witness, she was telling me things that was in the Bible, and I was like,
yeah.
and any question I had, she would answer. So I
Yeah.
remember her teaching me this, well, telling me this at that time, but it resonated with me as I got older. So I said, you know, Grandma, why is you so nice to these people? They keep calling to try to get you
Yep.
in trouble and stuff, and why is you so nice to them? Because, like, you still giving them cakes and apples and stuff. Like, what, you know? And she said, because that's who they are. That's not who you are.
Mm.
And you can't allow people to turn you into who they are.
Yeah. That's so
And
good.
as I got older, I was like, whoa, you know, because I would be like,
Mm.
I'm the person like, oh, you trying to be mean to my mother? Okay, you know.
Right.
And I had to understand. My mom will give you the clothes off of her back as well. You know, she
Yep.
help you. And people have hurt her and done her wrong in life, you know, but it hasn't changed her heart. That was a
Mm-hmm.
lesson that I needed to learn. So
Mm-hmm.
definitely on the same page about as far as losing our grandparent.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah. Yep, she said drop
That's
a lot of little golden jewels, I call it. And
yeah.
it didn't
And
make
that goes Yeah, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about being the light of the world. We
right,
are called to be a light. I mean, I shouldn't act like everybody else, and I shouldn't let them make me act like them.
right.
So that's so it's hard, but
It
that's so
is.
good.
It is. It is. So we both
That's
dropped some knowledge. We both dropped some gems in here. Okay.
So good.
Okay, the audience will definitely leave feeling inspired. I know I will.
Me
Um,
too.
it
Me
was
too.
amazing interviewing you. Is it anything that you want to announce where we can get your book, if you got any events or anything going on?
Yes. So, my book is available on Amazon. It is called The Impartation. It is by Starr Branch. Starr Branch. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Threads, and it's Star Starr Branch Branch. I just kept everything simple because I wanted everyone to be able to find me. So
Right.
if you look for my name, baby, you're gonna find me. I
Yeah.
also have a blog that I write on. Sometimes I'm not as consistent there as I am with my videos.
Okay.
But if anyone finds my social media, they'll also be able to find my blog where I have other writings as well.
Awesome. And I'll also will tag her below in this video. So if you guys need to reach out to her, you want to purchase and support and buy her book, all the
Yes.
information will be in the bottom of this video. Okay.
Perfect.
So it was
Perfect.
wonderful. It was my
Yes.
pleasure to interview you today.
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate you for reaching out and for allowing me to come and run my mouth. And I have truly enjoyed our conversation.
I did too. I did too. We definitely have to do this again.
Yes.
Backstory before we end off and how things are aligned is because Star on Threads. Threads is a part of Instagram for those who don't know or don't have Instagram. And I followed her. I made a comment underneath her announcement of her doing a book, and I said I needed her on my platform. Okay. And I didn't think that she was interested, because I've been promoting and trying to recruit people to come onto the platform. And I was like, maybe she's not interested. And look at God. I went to Threads and I'm scrolling, okay? I'm scrolling. And it says, somebody wrote a comment and they were like, they wanted me on their platform, their podcast. And I don't remember. I don't see it. And I was like, let me screenshot this just in case she's talking about the comment I made.
Yes. Yes.
And here we
That
are.
was nobody but God.
Right.
Nobody but God. Because I was losing my mind looking through threads, looking through all my posts because I could see it. But I don't know, because I knew that I connected with you on threads,
Hmm.
I automatically thought it was on threads. I didn't even go back to Instagram and double check. So I was
Right.
like, I'ma just try. I'ma just say it. And so the fact that you saw it was so great.
It was
I'm
me.
so grateful to God. It was all God for sure.
So when I
He was
get
like,
her book,
let me help my daughters out because she
yeah,
she a
because we need
mess.
to find each other, okay? We
Yes,
need to find each other immediately.
yes,
So I'm
for
happy that
sure.
this happened. This interview was an amazing. It wasn't even like an interview. I just had a talk with you and some tea.
Yes.
Okay? So I will be inviting you back in the future. When I get your book and everything, I will be reading a couple poetry pages out of there. But
Yes.
before we end off completely, would you read us something?
Yes. So I'm gonna read my favorite poem in the
Okay.
book. It is called Rebel.
Okay.
And then I'll just talk about it real quick. So it says, Rebel. Within me there is a war. There is a lion and a lamb. They both want ownership of me. My lion wants me to stand. My lamb wants me to lie down. My lion wants revenge. My lamb wants peace. My lion wants it now. My lamb takes its time. I am a rebel and I'm fighting inside. The me that wants me to be all I can be, and the me that just wants to sit still and be. That one's called Rebel. And I just want to encourage everyone. There is an internal battle, and there is the version that is okay with who you are today, and there is the version of you that knows it's going to take hard work, it's going to take effort, but there is a higher version of you that's awaiting inside. And so
Absolutely.
you're going to always have that battle, and that's okay. But understand, some days you're going to listen to your lion, and some days you're going to listen to your lamb, and that's okay.
Oh, that was Star. I can talk to her for hours, guys. So
Yes,
we're
me
gonna end the
too.
episode, but make sure you guys like, comment, share, and subscribe so I can drop more inspiring testimonies and stories that will have you uplifted by the time you end the video. Okay? I
Yes.
appreciate you, Star. We will talk
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye bye.
Yes.